The story doesn't begin with a hello. It begins with a blade. And that is why pity is the most cowardly form of insult. Sloane Ashford's voice is clean and cold enough to cut, the edge catching in the hush of the Meridian table. She sits in a high-spec wheelchair whose carbon weave gleams like a stealth wing under the chandelier. Across from her, a man in a borrowed collared shirt that still smells faintly of bargain detergent, tenacious gray half-moons under his fingernails, no soap can lift. Axel Axe Stone looks like someone who has spent his life with his hands inside engines, which is exactly true. I'm sorry, ma'am, he says. She doesn't look at him. She continues as if he were air and the room a boardroom. Pity doesn't connect people. It separates them. It strips dignity faster than any disease. It's a passive broadcast that says, I'm relieved I'm not you. Axe lowers his eyes to the creased note his roommate scrawled in a hurry. Sarah. 7 p.m. Table 12. The little brass placard on this table says 9, the number worn to a dull oval by years of polishing. I think. Axe pushes his chair back an inch. I think you've got the wrong idea. I don't pity you. I don't even know you. A small, unsmiling hint of amusement touches her mouth. Oh, you know me. At least you know my table. They always park me here, near the exit. Efficient. Her chin flicks toward the bar. Table 12 is over there, and your Sarah appears to have left with a man in an Armani suit. Axe turns. Table 12 is empty. He chews the fact like a dry seed, stood up, sat wrong, wandered into someone else's minefield. He has stumbled into the daughter of the most intimidating CEO in New York, and now he's an accidental audience for her dissection of pity. The waiter starts toward him, alarm and apology wrestling on his face. Axe sits back down. All right, he says, voice steadier. I lost a date. Looks like you lost yours, and I'm hungry. The waiter nearly drops the wine key. Sir? Axe doesn't look away from Sloane. It's fine. The steak special. And whatever she wants. Sloane blinks. A beat passes, then something alive lifts behind her eyes. Not relief, not gratitude. Something rarer. Recognition of an equal who refuses to handle her like porcelain. He stays, she tells the waiter. Please. Hours earlier, Axe's world is noise and heat, and the thin whistle of a complaint only he can hear. He is elbow deep in a BMW's engine bay, while the boss paces behind him, red in the face about a customer who has already taken the car to 3 dealership specialists. It's not the transmission, Axe says without looking up. Then what? Injector 3, he says. It's got a micro leak. Hear that? That little whine that shows up when you goose the throttle and then dies when you lift? It's losing pressure. The boss hears nothing. Axe does. He always does. The metal talks. Most people don't listen. He tightens, cleans, tests. The engine settles into a confident purr and the boss's anger evaporates into relief. The customer tips big. None of it pays the overdue rent. In the apartment, the kitchen bulb is the color of old tea. Past due notices form a thin drift on the counter. His roommate leans in a door frame like a habitual apology. Axe, I'm jammed. Spot me 50, I'll square you tomorrow. Axe opens the wallet. 120, 110, 2 5s, a 10 of lint. 60 for the week. He peels off the 50 and hands it over. The roommate's thanks is already halfway down the hall. Axe's gaze sticks to the photo on the fridge held by a chipped magnet. He and his mother on a hospital blanket, her smile small, expensive, determined. He couldn't fix the illness. He has been trying to fix the world ever since. The note on the counter, Sarah. 7 p.m. Table 12. Looks like a lifeline his friends tossed to drag his private life out of dry dock. He showers hard and scrubs harder. The oil ghosts stay under his nails like memories. Across the river, the penthouse might as well be a museum. Large canvases, clean lines, light controlled into obedience. Sloane sits at a long table, laptop open, 4 faces on a call. She pinches a spreadsheet with 2 fingers and flicks to a particular line like a card shark, revealing the Meridian glitters without trying. People who never worry about price move like it's choreography. Axe arrives on time because tardiness in a garage means a car falls on you and sits where the host directs. Brass plaque. Number 9. The room hums. At 7:10 his stomach growls, and at 7:12 his date is a rumor evaporated into perfume. At 7:15 he learns the woman across from him has a voice like tempered glass and opinions to match. Now the steak rests in a halo of butter and rosemary between them, and the conversation that shouldn't exist begins, because neither of them backs up when pushed. Axe talks first, because he doesn't know what else to do, because silence here feels like a luxury he isn't entitled to. He talks about work in the plain grammar of torque and thread pitch. People think cars are just parts. They're systems. You change one thing, you change the sound 3 feet away. A bearing wears wrong over here, and the piston sings wrong over there. Metal tells you before it fails, if you listen. Sloane had braced for yachts and private jets and places in St. Bart's. Instead, bearings and friction and the patience to hear a problem before it explodes. She answers without thinking. Balance sheets do it too, she says. They hum when fear runs through an organization. There's a noise to cooked numbers. You can feel the drag. They both laugh once, short, surprised. The waiter refills her water, eyes flicking to the carbon chair and away, to Axe's shirt, to the scuffed plaque, to the universe of social rules. Axe watches Sloane watch the room and understands something useful. The distance she keeps is armor, not altitude. Do you ever get tired of fixing things? She asks. Not when they want to be fixed, he says. The trick is knowing when to put the wrench down. Her mouth tilts. People keep mistaking me for a thing to be upgraded. Firmware, hardware, marketing, new version of me. They never try listening. Axe holds her gaze. I did hear something earlier, he says. Under your They walk out together because parting here feels artificial. The alley behind the restaurant smells like rain on stone and the city's low electrical thrum. Her driver idles at the curb. He should let the night end. He doesn't. Would you like to get a coffee somewhere that doesn't cost half a paycheck? He asks. She should say no. She doesn't. A week rethreads their lives quietly. They choose unimportant places. A park bench with a view of the river, a diner that advertises breakfast all day and means it, a bus stop where oil freckles the curb. He learns how she orders tea like a task with criteria. She learns that the oil under his nails never quite goes away and that he takes pride in that. He doesn't bring tools to these meetings. He brings attention. She never lets the chair be the subject. She makes it furniture, not fate. One afternoon the tone snaps. Axe steps into the penthouse for the first time and tastes climate-controlled perfection. The chair that costs as much as a car waits by the window like a small spacecraft. Sloane's mouth is tight. It jerks left, she says, and it makes a clicking noise I can't unhear. They've been here 3 times this week. They keep saying it's software. He kneels. He powers the chair down, tilts, and puts his ear near the right drive hub. He spins the wheel with 2 fingers. There, under the hum, a faint high whine that rises and dies. Not software, he says softly. Physics. Someone spec'd cheap bearings for the right drive, uneven wear. They're trying to band-aid the asymmetry with torque mapping. The code is fighting the hardware. How can you tell? It told me. He looks around the kitchen's precise beauty. He takes a soda can, a bottle of olive oil that costs more than his phone and his Leatherman from his back pocket. He cuts the aluminum into a shim as thin as a thumbnail, wipes a glint of oil on his fingertips, and eases the bearing into alignment with patient pressure. 20 minutes. Not elegant, not permanent. Sufficient. Power never knocks. It arrives with paperwork. 3 days later, a man in a suit more expensive than a car wash steps into the Queen's garage, and the boss goes pale. Marcus doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. I don't know what you think you're doing, he says to Axe in a tone that makes expensive men scramble. My daughter is fragile. The word lands like a slur. Something old and hard in Axe clicks into place. Marcus slides a check across a workbench, the paper thick like pride. This clears your debts and opens you a shop anywhere in the country, not in New York. It is a clean exit, a rational exit. The kind of exit a man with overdue notices should take. Axe looks at the number, he looks at the man. He tears the check in 2 with a sound like dry bark and drops the halves into the trash. You're wrong, he says. She's the strongest person I know. Maybe you're the one who can't stand seeing her as she is. Silence. The boss stops moving. The shop's fan hums and the smell of grease holds steady. Marcus's mouth hardens the way steel hardens in a quench. Get out of my garage, Axe says. You think this is a garage, Marcus says mildly. It's a permit, it's a lease, it's an inspection schedule. He leaves. The door's soft thud sounds exactly like the start of a problem. The problem arrives organized. An OSHA inspector with the right badge and a clipboard dotted with yellow flags. A landlord's letter, notarized and tasteful. The garage shutters, while small violations become large enough to enforce. The lease evaporates under a clause about renovations. The couch becomes the back of a truck. The night air grows colder through thin sheet metal and a sleeping bag that tries but fails. Axe answers Sloane's calls until he can't answer anymore without sounding like someone drowning. Then he stops answering. Pride is a kind of hearing loss. It blocks out every sound except your own breath. Sloane texts once, "Are you okay?" He types, deletes, types again, and sets the phone face down. The city moves around him. Somewhere uptown, a gala invitation is thick paper on a tray. He should not be able to get into the Ashford Foundation gala. But men who fix things learn doors. He walks through one and then another, clothes clean but stained in ways the coat check can't erase, beard rough from bad sleep. Cameras turn because scandal smells like electricity. He doesn't look at the stage. He looks at table 9 because he knows she'll be near an exit. Marcus is mid-speech. A banner behind him displays Sloane's face 10 feet high and the name of a rehabilitation center like a brand promise. Pity hides under philanthropy's tuxedo. Security moves when Axe moves. He doesn't hurry. He walks to Sloane's table like a man who came to fix something simple. He kneels, not like a suitor, but like a mechanic, and takes a small wrench from the back pocket where he keeps everything that matters. He reaches for the footrest. The loose bolt had been complaining for days, a quiet chitter only a certain kind of ear respects. He tightens until the metal answers with a clean, satisfying click. Her breath catches. Not because of spectacle, because that sound means someone cared enough to hear it. "It's been rattling," he whispers, voice hoarse, words for her alone. "It was driving me insane." Every camera in the room catches a man on one knee and a woman biting back a laugh that breaks into something like light. Every person in the room hears nothing but the small click that embarrasses all the speeches. Sloane lifts the microphone from her table. "Dad." The room turns. Marcus freezes on stage, mouth open around a clause. "You're lying," she says. "You didn't build that center for me. You built it for you. You built it because you can't stand seeing me like this." She turns, puts a hand on Axe's shoulder, steadies herself as much as him. Her eyes are clear enough to make everyone else blink. "For years people looked at me with pity. They saw a tragedy. Tonight this man, this broke, stubborn mechanic, fought past your guards not to save me, not to fix me, but to tighten a bolt. He's the only one here who doesn't see a wheelchair girl. He sees a machine that needed adjustment, and a woman he loves." She lets the mic fall. It hits the table with a heavy thud that sounds like judgment passed. 6 months is enough time to rename a life. The glass storefront in Brooklyn says Ashford Stone Precision in clean letters. Inside, the air smells like carbon fiber and optimism. On one workbench, a lightweight frame waits for a final hand polish. On another, a CAD screen glows with a hinge designed to outlive arrogance. Sloane runs a meeting on an iPad, sleeves rolled, hair up, voice decisive. Axe works with a torque wrench and the calm of someone who finally put the right parts in the right places. His hands are still dirty. It looks good on him. Marcus walks in, carrying 2 boxes of coffee and a pink cardboard crate of donuts that sweat sugar. He nods to Axe without flinching. No checks, no speeches, just a man trying to learn how to be in a room without purchasing it. Axe wipes his hands on a clean rag and crosses the floor. Sloane tilts her cheek up. The kiss is quick and honest. They bend over the next design together, shoulders almost, not quite, touching. Equal pressure on the same blueprint. Outside, the city yawns open like a mouth. Inside, a bolt seats with a soft click and stays put. Rain had matted the city into a low hush the night they found the only coffee shop that didn't perform at you. No marble, no sparklers in the foam, metal chairs that scraped, a bell over the door that had forgotten how to be bright. The counter girl slid them 2 paper cups and a receipt that stuck to Axe's fingertip like a thin bandage. They sat by the window. Outside, taxis smeared their yellow down the avenue. Inside, the air was warm enough to undo the day. Sloane drank tea because she liked the ritual of waiting for heat to travel. Axe took his coffee black because everything else felt like lying. For a while they traded small artifacts, pieces of themselves that cost nothing and everything. "People touch the handles of my chair without asking," she said. "It's small, it's not small." He nodded. "Folks set their coffee on a hood like it's a table." That paint took me 3 hours. She smiled at the parallel, and he stored it. When she tested him with sharper things, he held. She told him about investors who looked her in the eye and then asked her assistant the question they just asked her. He told her about bosses who called him Ace because using his name would have been work. She admitted sometimes she wanted to throw the entire penthouse into the river just to see if it could float. He admitted sometimes he wanted to roll a brand new SUV out of the shop just to scare the owner into remembering it was 2 tons of physics and not a phone. "What did you almost do today and stop yourself from doing?" she asked, as if the answer mattered more than anything else. "Tried to fix something in you that wasn't broken," he said. "Stopped in time." "Good," she answered, and stirred her tea without looking. The spoon tapped the paper cup once, twice, a tiny tink like a metronome for how to proceed. He took the bus home because his train card had $3 left and he wanted to save it for the morning. When he stepped down, the bus exhaled a tired shh that sounded like permission. He slept harder than he meant to. He dreamt of bearings with voices and of a room where nobody tried to upgrade anybody. In the penthouse that first night after the fix, quiet, unspooled into corners that had stayed tense for months. Sloane wheeled to the window and watched the river move with the kind of confidence only something huge and unconcerned could manage. The chair came with her like a well-trained animal. No leftward twitch, no tiny click asking for attention. She turned the lights off and left the city's blue to paint the room. Her phone buzzed. "Get home safe?" he'd written, 5 words with no push inside them. She typed back, "Yes. Your shim is a miracle." Then deleted miracle and wrote, "It runs clean." She hit send and felt better for saying it in a language he'd understand. On her father's desk, in a house across town, a stationary pen bled a slow signature into a donation pledge. He didn't know about the shim. He knew the name of a surgeon who had spoken at Davos. He knew 10 different ways to quantify hope, so it looked like a plan. The day after Marcus brought the check, Axe learned what a ledger looks like when it comes to collect. The inspector's shoes left damp crescents on the shop floor. He was polite, almost sorry, and thorough. The boss's arguments hit a wall built out of codes and subsections. The red tags fluttered on the compressor like warning flags. "None of this is unfixable," the inspector said, voice not unkind. "Just not today." The landlord's letter arrived with a stapled addendum that had been in the lease since before Axe started. Renovation clause, 30 days to vacate. He packed slow because the only thing worse than leaving is hurrying while you do it. He stacked wrenches by size and weight, muscle memory sorting steel as if it were a kind of comfort. He kept the little wrench that had tightened Sloane's footrest in his back pocket where it always lived. Night in the truck carried its own weather. Thin blanket, jacket under his head, streetlight making the windshield into a bad mirror. The city's sounds climbed in through the vents and stretched out on the bench seat like old friends with terrible manners. Axe turned on the radio and then turned it off. He could not stand the jolly of a DJ trying to fill air. He listened instead to the valved breath of buses and the faraway clatter of a loading dock. Somewhere a security gate rolled down with a flat metallic brr. Somewhere else a couple argued quietly their way back to being tender. His phone lit up the cab with Sloane's name and he let it ring out. Pride spoke in his ear. "Don't be the problem she needs to carry. Don't drag your weight across her floor." He hated that voice and obeyed it. She found the garage shuttered, a closed sign hanging crooked on a chain like a tired necklace. The neighbor kid, maybe 12, with a skateboard and a scab the size of a quarter, told her in the sincere tone reserved for disaster updates that the orange sticker guy had come, and then the other man with the envelope, and then your friend with the beard left with a box. The kid pointed with his chin toward the side street where the truck sometimes slept. "He fixes our bikes," the boy said. "Won't take money, says it's quick." She thanked him and watched the street long enough to make herself angry. It would be easy, so easy to solve this the way she'd been taught. A call, a transfer, a lawyer like a chess piece slid to the right square. She tasted that idea the way she sometimes tasted sugar in a drink she hadn't ordered. Then she spit it out. On her lap, under a small blanket, she had a tool roll she'd bought without telling herself why. Not the cheap kind with pretense, but a canvas wrap with pockets like mouths, stitched to hold the quiet dignity of objects that do what they're made to do. She left it hooked over the truck's door handle in a neat loop that would not blow away. No. He would understand or he wouldn't. She was not a benefactor. She was a partner, no matter how long it took him to say it out loud. That night, she sat at her desk and searched permits. Her last name opened rooms and databases. The path was too clean to be accidental. It would have taken only 2 calls to reverse it. She turned off the screen and let the dark stay dark. The gala didn't end when the mic hit the table. After the echo drained out of the marble, after the cameras remembered to breathe, after the chorus of public relations instincts found their synchronized beat, the first wave of people left with the quick little steps of those who find truths embarrassing. The second wave lingered to harvest proximity. The last wave stayed because they wanted to watch something they could not buy change shape in front of them. Marcus stepped off the stage and into a future he hadn't consented to yet. He found Sloane in a corner where a waiter had been herded into a statue by the sudden absence of orders. "I miscalculated," he said. The words were plain. He did not often trade in plain. "You did," she said, "but not the way you think." "Let me guess the way you think," he said, old habit moving his mouth for him. "You believe philanthropy can hide cowardice." "I believe love can hide it better," she said, and watched him wince. "You were scared to see me as I am. You used your favorite tools. I'm asking you to use your eyes." He stood, hands empty for once. He looked at the chair like a man trying to stop doing that. He looked at her face. He looked at Axe, who stood a pace behind like a wall that wasn't a prison. He nodded once. It wasn't surrender. It was an adjustment. "Come by the shop next week," she said. "We could use cheap labor to carry donuts." His laugh broke out like an accident, short and surprised. "I can do expensive donuts," he said. "Then you'll have to take orders from the guy with the wrench," she said, and the smile he gave her was new. They opened quiet. The sign went up on a wet morning and 2 people wheeled in before the paint had dried. Word of mouth, the only network that has ever mattered. The first real test arrived on a Saturday that smelled like rain again. A teenager with forearms like cables and eyes you could pour light into. His mother pushed the chair. He pushed the air around him like it owed him speed. Paralympic posters lived under the scuffs of his backpack. He wanted camber and responsiveness and dignity. Insurance had bought him a chair that looked fast in photos and sulked like a mule in turns. "What do you want it to do?" Axe asked him, "not what they told you it should do." The kid looked at the floor and then up. "I want it to stop fighting me," he said. "I want the wheels to tuck just enough so I don't chew my shoulders up by 25. Sloane asked him to show her how he transfers. She watched the micro-hesitations. The moment his right arm overcompensated, the fraction of a second he braced because the left caster had a mind of its own. She didn't call it out like a flaw. She called it a variable. "We can give you 2 degrees more camber without eating your hand space," she said, "and a hinge that actually respects you." Axe rolled the chair onto the platform he'd built out of stubbornness and scrap. He loosened, measured, shimmed, he listened. The first test run in the alley painted 2 black smiles on wet concrete. The kid came back with rain on his face and a grin nobody could afford. "How much?" the mother asked, voice braced to be told a number with a comma in it. "We'll invoice you for the parts," Sloane said. "And a consultation that doesn't insult you." When they left, Marcus stepped out from wherever he'd been pretending not to watch. He had coffee in a cardboard box with a handle, like a briefcase that had gone soft. He set it down on the workbench and looked at the alley where speed had just happened. "That looked like business," he said. "That looked like purpose," Sloane said. "Difference being?" "Business answers to numbers," she said. "Purpose answers to people." He nodded as if he were writing it down where it would stick. He reached for a donut, powdered sugar making his cuff look like it had brushed a cloud. Axe held up a new hinge for him to see. It was a small marvel, light, patient, clever. Marcus turned it in his hand. They built rituals because rituals make time behave. Every morning, Axe checked torque by feel, and then against the wrench's stubborn honesty. Every afternoon, Sloane ran numbers like a conductor. Cash flow, purchase orders, timelines. She swore allegiance to margin because margin kept them alive, not because she loved it. He swore allegiance to the slack in a cable because a false tightness kills you slowly. When parts came late, when a supplier tried to gasp a surcharge into being, when a client cried without warning in a fitting because someone had finally stopped treating them like a malfunction, those days ended with Sloan and Axe on the stoop outside with 2 paper cups and the sky doing a slow color change. "You know the beast we're building?" he asked once, not looking at her because sometimes looking makes truths perform instead of arrive. "It's bigger than chairs." "I know," she said. "We're building a place where the tool is honest, and where the fix is about the thing," he said, "not the person." Exactly. A siren curled by and unrolled itself down the block. Somewhere a door did that bop it does when a hinge is almost right. He felt for his little wrench. It was there, patient against his spine. She reached out and pressed her palm to the floor beside his boot, as if testing whether the building was truly theirs. The concrete felt solid. Her hand felt warmer than the night. Sometimes late, she went home with him the long way, through neighborhoods that still smelled like bread at 4 in the morning and steam in the winter and hot asphalt in the summer. He learned which curbs were liars that promised a ramp and delivered a cliff. She learned which alleys a truck could sleep in without being woken by a knock that was actually a warning. They stopped at his old garage when it reopened under a new sign with a new owner who wore cologne like authority. Axe didn't go in. He stood across the street and listened. "What do you hear?" she asked. He squinted. "A belt too tight on the front compressor. Somebody will burn that motor in a month." "What else?" "Pride," he said. "The kind that forgets to sweep." She squeezed the rim of her wheel, the rubber giving back. "We won't forget," she said. "We can't," he answered. He kissed her then because the street was ugly and therefore perfect. Her hand steadied on the back of his neck, not possessive, not delicate. A hand for a man. Somewhere, a loose sign tapped a brick wall. Tick, 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 a reminder to go home. On a Tuesday, no different from any other until it was the first international order landed. A clinic in São Paulo wanted 10 hinges and the training to install them properly. Marcus read the email over Axe's shoulder and whistled low, an unpracticed sound. "Congratulations," he said. "You're exporting decency." "Exporting a hinge," Sloan corrected. "Decency is local. We build it here every morning." She priced the order with the precision of someone who had stopped apologizing for value. Axe pulled a hinge from the shelf and spun it once, satisfied by the consistent weight. A small click answered his test, faithful as always. "Still your favorite sound?" she asked. "It's the sound of things agreeing," he said. "Then listen," she said. Outside, the shop door swung back and a woman rolled in, her face set in that determined line that says, "Do not waste me." Behind her came a man with the way of someone about to hand over everything to the wrong solution. He stopped when he saw the walls, photos of clients grinning in alleys, torque charts, a framed napkin with the first hinge sketch. He relaxed by an inch. She unclenched by 2. "Who's in charge?" she asked. Sloan and Axe looked at each other. For once, neither deferred. "We are," Sloan said. "What do you need it to do?" Axe asked. The woman pointed at the chair. "Stop arguing with me," she said. "Good," Sloan said. "We don't do couples therapy, we do mechanics." They laughed, because relief often wears the same coat as humor, and the days started moving like a well-oiled thing. Marcus took his place at the back with a broom he had bought himself. He swept with care, learned the floor's particular resistances, and, when no one was looking, practiced the sign for proud in the dusty glass of the parts cabinet. He was not good at it yet. He was trying. The hinge seated with a soft finality. The caster turned true. The client took the alley at speed, rain or no rain, and the world met her without argument. Inside, the torque wrench clicked. Outside, a mic from some other event fell on some other table with some other thud because other people still needed to learn. Here, in the small room with its clean light and its honest tools, the work continued. Precise, quiet, human. Winter came not as a season but as an attitude. Gray, restrained, certain of its own endurance. The city dimmed at 4 o'clock and learned to survive under electric suns. Inside the shop, warmth hummed low, built from metal friction and quiet industry. Axe wiped grease off his forearm with a rag that had forgotten its original color. He was working on a new frame, sleek, narrow, designed to tilt forward just enough to defy gravity. Across the table, Sloane reviewed the specs on a tablet, her hair tied back, focus cutting through fatigue. "You're making it lighter again," she said. "Strength isn't always about adding," he answered. "Sometimes it's what you dare to take away." She looked at him for a long moment. "That applies to people too." The silence that followed was warm, not awkward. It was the kind you earn after surviving too much truth together. Outside, snow began to fall. Slow, deliberate flakes that landed without sound. Marcus appeared at the doorway, his coat carrying the smell of the cold. He held 2 paper cups and set them on the workbench. "Coffee, one too sweet, one too honest," he said. Sloane smiled faintly. "You remembered. I've been listening," he said. "Apparently it runs in the family now." Axe chuckled softly and took a cup. For a moment, 3 people who used to orbit in different worlds stood in the same warmth. Later that night, when the city had fallen asleep under its thin white disguise, Sloane sat by the big front window. The reflection showed 2 versions of her: the woman she had been, trapped in polished marble, and the one she'd become, surrounded by honest light and oil stains. Axe joined her, carrying a small object wrapped in a cloth. He unfolded it carefully, a brass plate etched by hand. The engraving read, "Ashford Stone Precision, Listening, Built In." She ran her fingers across the letters. "You really did it. You said the world forgets who listens," he said. "So now the sign won't." Her eyes softened. "You know this," she gestured around, "the tools, the machines, the hum. This doesn't feel like a garage anymore." He tilted his head. "Then what does it feel like?" "A heartbeat," she said. "Something still imperfect but alive." The months passed like steady breathing. Their shop became a quiet rumor in the city, known not for pity or miracles, but for results that spoke softly and worked perfectly. People came from boroughs away, then from other states, drawn by something they couldn't name but could feel. Respect disguised as craftsmanship. One afternoon, a man arrived with a folded newspaper. On the front page, under the headline, "Ashford Stone Redefines Accessibility," was a photo of Sloane and Axe standing beside a new prototype chair. "You're in the news," the man said, smiling, "but the article got one thing wrong." "What's that?" Axe asked. "It called you innovators," the man said. "But what you're doing, that's repair, for the world, not just the wheels." When he left, Sloane turned to Axe. "Do you think that's true?" Axe leaned against the table, wiping his hands. "We're all broken machines trying to stay tuned. Maybe the trick isn't fixing, maybe it's keeping the rhythm." She nodded slowly. "Then let's keep the rhythm." That night, when the lights dimmed and the tools fell silent, she wheeled closer to him. The air smelled of metal and possibility. "You once told me," she said quietly, "that metal tells stories." He smiled. "And you didn't believe me." "I didn't know what to listen for," she said, "but now I do." He reached out, fingertips brushing the curve of her wheel, a gesture more intimate than touch. "What's it saying tonight?" he asked. "That it's not done," she whispered. "That it wants to move." He bent down and kissed her, not with urgency, but with the steadiness of someone who had spent a lifetime learning patience. The snow outside softened the city's noise until it became a lullaby. And for the first time in years, both of them stopped listening for what was wrong. They simply listened. To the quiet, to the heartbeat of the shop, to the world slowly learning to move again. Morning light crawled across the workshop floor, slow and deliberate, touching bolts, wires, and paper coffee cups left half full. Sloane was already there, hair undone, coat still on, her breath forming a faint fog near the cold glass. She was reading an email, but her eyes weren't on the words, they were on the space between them. Axe came in quietly, brushing snow from his shoulders, carrying that small warmth that follows honest work. "Bad news?" he asked. She shook her head once. "A government contract proposal. They want us to mass-produce the hinge. That's good news." "It's not," she said, folding the screen shut. "They want cheaper metal, faster work. They don't care about the click. They only care about the unit count." The room went still. The small radio on the shelf hummed with static, as if the world itself didn't want to interrupt. He sat across from her. "You could say no." "I could," she said, "but then we stay small. And small things don't last long here." Axe leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Then maybe small things that last aren't supposed to be built for everyone." She looked at him. Really looked. You'd rather build slow and stay honest? I'd rather build right and stay human. That night, Sloane couldn't sleep. The snow outside looked like static on an old TV. Her father's words played somewhere deep in memory, scale or be swallowed. She had lived her whole life under that mantra. But Axe's quiet defiance had done what no market report ever could. It had cracked the logic of fear. She wheeled to her desk and opened her notebook. On the first page, she wrote 3 words in clean, deliberate ink. We build to listen. Underneath, she drew a circle, the outline of a wheel, a hinge, and maybe a heart. Days later, a van arrived with a worn logo and a story inside. 2 veterans stepped out, one missing a hand, one missing patience with pity. They'd heard of the hinge, not from newspapers but from someone who used one. Can it take a punch? The taller man asked. Axe smiled. It can take the world. They stayed until dusk, testing, arguing, laughing in the language of people who understand weight. When they left, the shop felt larger. Sloane leaned against the counter, watching the door close behind them. Do you ever think, she asked, we're not fixing machines at all? Axe looked up from his bench. What do you mean? I mean, maybe we're fixing the part of people that stops believing they can move. He paused, wrench in hand, the truth of it settling in the air like dust in sunlight. Then we better keep at it, he said. A week later, Marcus brought the newspaper again. Another article, another headline. But this time he didn't speak. He just set it down, watching them through the reflection on the glass wall. His daughter and the man who'd rebuilt her world piece by piece, not through money, but through listening. Do you regret it? Axe asked him quietly. Marcus exhaled. Regret comes easy, learning doesn't. I'm trying the second thing. He reached for the broom, started sweeping again. Slow, steady strokes that filled the silence with a rhythm like breathing. Sloane watched him, then looked back at Axe. The sound of the bristles, the faint hiss of the heater, the metallic hum of a new hinge settling into place, all of it blended into something close to peace. You hear that? She whispered. Axe nodded. Yeah. It's the sound of everything still working. Outside, snow melted down the gutters, running like silver veins through the street. Inside, under the soft light of their small workshop, 2 people kept listening. To metal, to motion, to each other. And in that quiet, the world held together a little longer. Spring arrived quietly. Not a burst, but a thaw. The kind that softens concrete first, then people. By April, the shop windows stayed open all day. The hum of drills mixed with birdsong. On the street outside, children rode scooters past the sign that now gleamed with a slight patina, Ashford Stone Precision, listening built in. Sloane sat by the drafting table, sketching a new design. Her movements had changed. They were no longer careful, they were certain. There was purpose in the way she reached, measured, erased. Confidence in the way she inhabited space. Axe was across the room, tuning a chair for a client who wanted more than balance. She wanted speed, the kind of speed that felt like defiance. He crouched, eyes level with the wheels, listening the way a musician listens to the space between notes. You ever think, Sloane said without looking up, we've built a kind of orchestra? He tightened a bolt and smiled. You're the composer. Wrong, she said. We're both instruments. The music happens somewhere between. That evening, the city exhaled heat through its vents, a low, human sound. Axe and Sloane closed the shop late. Marcus had already gone home, leaving behind a box of fresh pastries and a note that said, Don't work through dinner. They ignored it, of course. Sloane rolled to the back, where the floor dipped slightly and the light from the street broke into bars through the steel grate. She stopped, watching dust move in the last shaft of daylight. You ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't sat at my table that night? She asked. Axe leaned against the wall, hands still stained with the day's work. No, he said simply, because I did. She turned to him, her expression softening. That's not logic. It's gratitude, he said. And maybe that's rarer. Weeks passed. Clients came and went. The shop grew louder, not with chaos, but with life. A child laughed as her new prosthetic wheel glided true. An old man cried when a chair finally turned without jerking. A woman with a scar down her spine brought flowers for the engineers who remembered I'm human. Through it all, Sloane and Axe worked wordlessly, side by side. The rhythm between them was its own language. Socket, torque, nod, smile. They didn't have to talk about love. They built it. One night, long after midnight, thunder rolled across Brooklyn. Rain lashed against the windows like it had unfinished business. The power flickered, and for a moment the shop fell into darkness. The kind of darkness that asks questions. Sloane's voice came through it, low, steady. "You ever afraid it'll all stop?" Axe found the flashlight, turned it on, haloing her face in warm light. "Everything stops," he said. "The trick is to build something that keeps moving without you." She reached for his hand, the same hand that had once trembled at the thought of touching her. It didn't tremble now. "Then promise me one thing," she said. "Name it. When it does stop, don't fix it, just let it rest." He looked at her for a long time. "That's the one thing I'll never be good at." "I know," she said, smiling. "That's why I trust you." The rain softened, the lights flickered back to life, one by one, hums, clicks, glows, until the shop was itself again. They stayed there, hands still joined, the world quiet around them. And somewhere deep in the floor, in the old faithful rhythm of metal and pulse, the city kept breathing, one soft heartbeat at a time. Years later, the Meridian table had changed. The chandeliers were dimmer now, by design, not decay. The restaurant had traded its corporate gloss for a quieter kind of luxury. Linen softened by time, glassware that caught the candlelight like memory. At a corner table near the window sat Sloane and Axe. No press, no bodyguards, no performance. Just two people who had earned their silence. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual noise, but here it was all background, a hum beneath something gentler. Sloane set her napkin down, tracing the edge of the tablecloth. "You know this is where it started," she said. Axe smiled. "How could I forget? I mistook a CEO's daughter for a date who stood me up." "You mistook a storm for a dinner," she said softly. He laughed, a sound worn by time but still young at the edges. "And somehow it worked out." "It didn't somehow," she corrected. "You stayed. That's what did it." Her voice held that calm strength, the kind that doesn't demand attention but keeps it. A waiter approached, older too, recognizing them, but choosing silence over spectacle. He poured wine with the respect of someone who'd learned that some reunions don't need an audience. When he left, Sloane looked out the window. Her reflection met his in the glass, a symmetry of scars and survival. "Do you ever miss the noise?" she asked. Axe tilted his head. "Which one?" "The one that tells you who you're supposed to be." He thought for a moment. "Sometimes. Then I remember how loud it was, how hard it was to hear the truth under it." She nodded. "Silence used to scare me. Now it feels like home." He reached across the table, his fingers rough against her steady hand. "Home's not a place," he said. "It's whoever listens back." The restaurant lights flickered as the evening deepened. At another table, a young couple argued quietly about careers, expectations, the kind of things Sloane once mistook for destiny. She watched them with something between empathy and nostalgia. Axe followed her gaze. "They'll figure it out," he said. "Maybe," she said, "if they learn to hear each other before it's too late." He smiled. "Took us long enough. Worth every year." Later, when dessert came, Sloane asked for something not on the menu. The house espresso, double strong. The waiter hesitated, then returned with 2 steaming cups and a look of conspiratorial warmth. Sloane raised hers slightly. "To mistakes that lead somewhere." Axe clinked his against hers. "To the things we fix by accident." The sound of porcelain touching was barely audible, but it echoed through the years between them. As they left, the maitre d' offered to call a car, but Sloane shook her head. "We'll walk." Outside, the night air wrapped around them, cool and salt-tinged from the river. Her wheels whispered against the pavement, his boots matched the rhythm. Side by side, they moved through the pulse of the city that once judged them, now quietly making space. At a crosswalk, the light changed. Sloane looked up, her eyes catching the reflection of streetlights and memory. "Listen," she said. Axe paused. "To what?" "The city," she whispered. "It's not loud anymore." He smiled. "No, it's tuned." And in that moment, beneath the hum of traffic, the breath of wind, the quiet strength between two people who had learned to listen, the world, for once, was perfectly aligned. Years later, the city had changed its skin again. Taller glass, quieter streets, a skyline that hummed with new machines. Yet somewhere in Brooklyn, tucked between a row of warehouses reborn into studios, the sign still hung, Ashford Stone Precision. Letters dulled by rain, meaning sharpened by time. Inside, a young apprentice adjusted a carbon frame under the morning light. The shop looked different now, cleaner, larger. But the air carried the same heartbeat, that soft rhythm of steel, oil, and care. The apprentice, a woman in her 20s with grease on her cheek, paused to listen. Not to music, but to the whisper of balance, the way the wheel turned, the way the hinge sighed. She smiled. "Good," she murmured, tightening the bolt with a kind of reverence. Behind her on the wall was a photograph. Axel and Sloane, taken years ago. She in her chair, eyes fierce and bright, he behind her, hand on her shoulder, both of them laughing, not posing, living. A small brass plate beneath the photo read, "We build to listen." Out back, the garden had grown wild around the old loading dock. Vines reached up the metal rails. Lilacs pressed their scent against the spring air. Marcus Ashford, older now, slower, stood there with a paper cup of coffee. He visited every Friday. Never said much. Just stood. Sometimes touched the railing like it was an altar. The apprentice came out and joined him. "You knew them?" she asked. He smiled faintly, eyes tracing the skyline. "I built walls," he said. "They taught me to take the doors off." She didn't know what to say, so she didn't. They stood in silence, the kind that feels like a story finishing its breath. That evening after closing, the apprentice sat alone inside the shop. She picked up an old wrench, the kind no one used anymore, its handle worn smooth from one man's stubborn loyalty. She held it the way someone holds a promise. Through the open door, the city glowed. Lights blinked like Morse code in the mist, quiet and constant. Somewhere out there a car backfired, somewhere closer a hinge clicked, a perfect, gentle sound. And for a moment, she swore she could hear them. Not as ghosts, but as a presence in the rhythm of things. In the hum of engines, in the creak of old metal, in the soft defiance of anything built by hand. A voice, calm and sure, whispered through the air like memory made warm. "Everything stops. The trick is to build something that keeps moving without you." She smiled. The wrench gleamed in her hand. Outside, the streetlights flickered, steadying into a perfect glow. The door sign turned with the breeze. Open. And the city kept listening. And that's where their story ends. Not with noise, but with something far rarer, quiet understanding. If you've stayed with this story until now, thank you for listening, for feeling every heartbeat between the words. If it touched you, even a little, please like, subscribe, and stay with us. New stories arrive every day. Deeper, braver, more human.